Thanks for joining us here on AccuWeather Early. I'm Kristina Shalhoup.
And I'm Bree Guy. It is Monday, January 29th. Yes, it is Monday, so hopefully you have enough motivation to get out of bed, to go to work, to do what you got to do. And the weather's not going to be too bad for most of the country either.
That's pretty fair. It's not the worst weather day. Let's take you out to the national map. It's like, what's happening? I mean, there's truly not too much. Even, Bree, our last area of low pressure pushing off the East Coast, it's almost gone. It's almost all the precipitation now moving away and dissipating. So a little good news as we start the morning.
Yeah, Mother Nature's on a vacation. She left her interns to do the job, and which is why we aren't necessarily talking about any big weather. They just can't handle it like Mother Nature did last week. Yeah. If you see it, just a few little puny storms that are making their way out of the Northeast, and we have some action in the Northwest as well.
Shout out to the interns, man. Getting the work done one step at a time.
Something has to happen.
Something has to happen. And you know what?
Millions of people will see this morning in the Northeast. A coastal storm has brought rain and heavy wet snow into the region, which will bring delays on the roads as we begin the work week.
Yeah, a little bit tough for some spots, especially right along the coast. But as the storm slides off the East Coast, we end up with colder, more seasonable temperatures. That's going to unfold throughout the week here. Washington, D.C., for example, is going to see highs in the 40s after a day of a new record, setting not just the record for the daily high, but the January high temperature. It was 80 degrees. That is so hot.
It is wild.
I'm cringing thinking about that.
I mean, I love that temperature for this time of year, not so much. But in general, those clouds socked right into the region, and well, behind us on radar, you can clearly see that we are still talking about some action, but it's on its way out of here. Like that unwanted dinner guest yesterday, where we didn't necessarily want to see all of the drenching rain through Pennsylvania to wake us up. And even on my way home yesterday, after working the early shift on AccuWeather Weekend, I saw some ice coming down, like little ice pellets falling from the sky. So really not fun. Meanwhile, if we take a look at radar, what's been happening here over the last few hours, well, we've had the snow and we've had the rain continuing, but surely, slowly but surely, sliding offshore. It's going to exit stage right, leave behind it really not too much to talk about, but in the meantime, we still do have a few streaming snow showers making their way on through southern New England as well. We've had lots of snow reports here over the past 12 hours. I want to zoom in closer towards this region here too. That's where we see lots of snow reports here making their way on a few areas across the Catskills. We achieved that with your AccuWeather forecast. And then with your exclusive AccuWeather forecast, well, we're achieving not even more, a little bit further east, as we are still tracking upwards to a foot of snow possible in a few of these areas. And yes, we've seen that in a few areas too. I was just looking at the snow totals. I have to update those. That's just how fast they're coming in. But we do have a few areas pretty blustery in Portland and Boston.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be kind of an uncomfortable day for travelers at the very least. And like, I mean, look, if you wanted to spend the day outside, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying it's not going to be the nicest day, but that's not my place. To each their own. You do you, whatever makes you happy. But I'll tell you, it is going to be a blustery day in Portland and Boston and Portsmouth, New Hampshire, as you're heading down the south shore to the Cape and the Islands. It's just not that pleasant. Wind speeds are in the double digits and your gusts are getting up into the 20s. So just something to keep in mind as you're heading out the door, or perhaps going out for whatever morning activity you choose. Maybe it's a walk, maybe it's a run. I don't know. You do your thing. It's just going to be a bit of a tough morning. We see temperatures plummeting as well, since the winds are coming out of the north. Now, what does that do? It helps to bring in the cold air from north to south. And you'll see the difference between yesterday morning and this morning, for example, in Pittsburgh. It's 12 degrees colder already in Pittsburgh as that air comes in. We've got 3 degrees colder in New York and Boston as well, and 2 degrees colder in Burlington and Portland. Now, that's going to be the trend for a good 2 days or so. Just to keep in mind, by the way, that those temperatures dropping equate to numbers that look a little something like this. We're in the 30s as you get out the door this morning in places like, let's say, Buffalo or Portland, Boston, New York, and even Washington, D.C. in the 40s. The bigger thing, though, is not how cold it is now. It's that we're not going to really change too much throughout the day. Since the air is coming from the north this afternoon, we don't get a chance to see those temperatures rise very much. So we end up with that flow keeping us in the 30s and 40s across the region. We'll start with I-95, where, look, it's not Arctic air. It's not even all that cold. Let's get real. It's January. You're not expecting the 80s, are you? Well, if you were, you're actually on the number in Washington, D.C. this past week. Fun fact, DC, little storms that come from Canada, they pack a little bit of a punch, but more so they're quick movers. So this thing in, out, done. And it's actually going to move not through the Northeast specifically, but more so take a dip dive through the mid-Atlantic coast. And that is going to bring some uncomfortable conditions, let's say to the Maryland Panhandle, for example, out to the Delmarva Peninsula, and even as you're heading into the Carolinas. But if you're north of those areas, not too much to write home about, is there? It's dry. We keep some sunshine.
And number one on our list are those West Coast woes. And for good reason.
Yeah.
We do have multiple storms that we are tracking, so it's going to be one after the other. So heads up, you're
trying to get on the roads. Big story number 2. Gosh, it's been a rough last week across the Gulf Coast. We had tremendous rainfall, lots of flooding, but we're finally getting a break.
Do it with me. Just a nice sigh of relief. It looks a lot great. It looks a lot better outside today, folks. If you do have any outdoor plans, maybe even just heading to work is going to look a lot better than it was these past few days. High pressure's in charge. Highs, though, will rise a few degrees.
Dreary Monday in the Midwest. Like, I feel like we've had almost the same headline in this region every day for a week.
You want some fog?
I would love some fog.
All right, here, I'll give you some fog.
Thank you.
I have plenty to give to you.
Say, travel today, not too bad, before this clipper comes in tomorrow. So
we're on the same wavelength.
Same brain. Let's take you to the map here as we move across the country. A lot of green. The areas that see the clipper tomorrow, like even Chicago and Detroit, today you're fine. Today you're easy peasy getting out on the roads into the airport. The areas of fog are a little concerning across, let's say, MSP